Hey all, here are OS Reviews. In this video, we're taking a quick look at the AJAZZ AK820 Max Elite. This is a wireless mechanical keyboard that has a very customized, playful appearance, avocado switch, cheese orange edition, and as the name suggests, it is inspired by oranges and cheese as part of its reoccurring motifs on the key switches as well as the deck itself. I'll just mention that if the orange cheese version is not your thing, you can also choose other variants, including a slightly more subtle black shark red version, not to mention other colorways including gray or this blue and lavender that also looks quite peaceful, and all of them are quite customizable when it comes to the switches that you can pick between, and there's 5 layers of padding to make it feel a bit more stabilized, dampening some of the vibrations as well as you're typing. And the AK820 series contains 2 variants, the one that we have here, aka the Elite or Max version, that also contains a small display that can show some ticker information, 0.85 inches IPS LCD, selling for around $55, so not bad for something that is so distinctive looking. Or you can choose for a version without the screen that only goes for around $40 or so, saving just a little bit more. All versions though come with a knob that you can use as a dial for changing volume as well as zooming in and out of certain images. There's also a built-in battery, 4,000 milliamp hours, so you can connect it to a smartphone, an iPad, or a computer from afar, or choose wireless 2.4G with a nano receiver using USB, or of course just a wired USB cable. Last but not least, here's all the different switches that you can pick between. Again, we have the avocado switch version, or you can choose this sea salt switch or ice cream switch instead. A little bit more playful than just calling it a red switch or a blue switch. I'll talk about more about the typing experience later in this video, and specifically between these switches you can find the activation force of these different variants as well as the ice blue switches you can also find over here. So based on those specs, the avocado switches are technically linear, similar to Cherry MX red switches, just as a rough point of reference. Otherwise, inside the packaging we also have a yellow accented Type-C cable for charging, pretty good attention to detail. You have key switch pullers, as well as 3 additional accent keys if you want to turn the spacebar white instead of the custom orange one, and also enter and escape. You can change instead of the fruit cheese colored specialty keys here by default, and there's just a quick user guide. The frame of the keyboard is constructed out of polycarbonate plastic, but it has a decent density and weight to it, doesn't feel cheap at all. The knob here is also crafted out of metal. It's cold to the touch, but it's a round sphere just to go with the whole slightly more cute design. You can also press down to act as an OK button. Otherwise, on the very top is going to be the Type-C port, in addition to switching between Windows and Mac OS shortcuts, and also the 3 modes between wired, Bluetooth, as well as 2.4G. And then finally on the back here is going to be the feet that you can pull up for a more elevated height. In fact, this is a 2-stage feet, so you can actually make the angle slightly more shallow, or if you want to position it a little bit higher up. Case in point, this is the first elevation. Compared to elevation number 2, looks something like this. It's going to be a little bit more of a steep incline. And otherwise, located on the right feet is also going to be the USB nano receiver if you're using it in this mode, plugging it into your computer. So this is pretty good attention to detail. I think it's the first time I've ever seen a double elevation as part of the kickstand. Now let's also try pulling off one of the keycaps. Let's start with maybe one of the arrow keys and giving it a bit of a tug so we can verify that the avocado switches are indeed green, and even the switches themselves are hot swappable if you want to choose other designs or then customize it yourself. The keycaps, by the way, are also accented orange on the inside, so it's double layered. Alright, so trying to switch it on to life here, starting with the Bluetooth mode, you can see that the ticker screen will initialize before then transitioning into a loop of some animations that you can display, like this AJAZZ logo. So it is a fun touch. Now the display is definitely a little on the small side compared to some of the other keyboards we've seen with built-in screens. It's actually the same exact dimensions as one of the regular keys, as you can tell. On this one though, it doesn't seem as easy for you to remove and replace it with a regular key. It's just built in flush with the deck of the keyboard, but at the very least the display is quite colorful. Viewing angles are also decent. Again, not really a touch screen, but just showing some quick animation and status info. Case in point, if you don't like the wallpaper animation, you can also show a simple clock info as well as the battery percentage remaining, as well as the date, and also confirm if we're in the Bluetooth profile. Plus, if we have certain functions like the caps lock here activated, you can also see the screen there illuminate in addition to the LED lights. As far as the sound of these keycaps and also the gasket mounts, overall it is a very satisfying typing experience. Everything is just so well stabilized. Nothing rattles or feels inconsistent as you're tapping along the different keys. Here's a quick typing test just to serve as an example. And because of the linear switches, I would say it's not too loud either. Certainly not as clicky as certain tactile keyboards like blue switches, for instance. So if you're using it in a slightly more shared space, others around you won't feel too annoyed. Again, just really peaceful and addicting almost as you are typing on it. You just want to continue using the keyboard more because of how nicely stabilized and consistent all the keycaps sound. Now this is a 75% keyboard, so it is missing a numpad on the edge. So if you're doing accounting work or working with numbers, with math, for instance, that is something to keep in mind. Although you are getting a more compact keyboard as a result, it might be a little easier for taking when on the go, and also if you are a bit more tight on desk space. So if you can live with that, the actual QWERTY keyboard section for typing in letters all sounds and feels very good. The layout doesn't really require too much time to get accustomed to, resulting in a pretty great typing experience, all things considered. Now, when it comes to the RGB backlight though, because of the ABS plastic being employed, the letters themselves don't actually shine. So we can kind of tell that in a slightly darker space. It may not bother you if you're a touch typist, but it is one slight con if you expect all of the keycaps to fully light up with the letters as well. But at the very least, the keycaps should be quite durable and the letters shouldn't fade or wear out quite as easily. And otherwise, this is the maximum brightness that it can reach. You can tap on function up and down arrow keys to decrease or increase the brightness level. Some other commands include tapping on function left and right to change the individual colors. It will be static and only sitting on this one shade. So for example, yellow, greens, and blues. We can also tap on function and the slash key to go into some pre-programmed modes. There's about 20 of them built into the device's memory. Here's kind of the classic rainbow just to serve as a reference. Not bad looking. And in all of these transition effects, you can also use individual colors instead if you prefer, such as blues as well as reds, or stick with just regular rainbow. Next one here is going to be a circle that is spinning round and round. Once more again into a reactive mode that will ripple outwards as we are typing. Once more is going to be another flashing one. I think these reactive modes in general look pretty cool, although it's probably best suited for touch typists or if you're using it as a conversation starter. If you want all the lights to be continuously lit, you may want to choose some of those other effects instead. Here's another one that kind of ripples outwards in a rainbow effect. Once more here is kind of a predetermined pattern that is just going from row to row, as you can tell there. Might be an interesting wallpaper though if it's just sitting there on your desk. Here's a wave pattern instead. And this diagonal stripe is one I really haven't seen before, looking pretty neat. Once more into a kind of crazy rainbow but feels a bit more random, going between individual rows now. And here's one which is a memory fade, so after you type on it for a couple of seconds, the letters will start to gradually fade and turn completely off. Here's kind of a candy-like pattern, quite vibrant. Another kind of offshoot of that, which is randomly going to light up different keys at different intervals. Once more here is also kind of a dancing, almost Christmas-like pattern, also quite fun maybe as a background wallpaper setting. Another one here is reminiscent of random, almost like Christmas lights. And then once more again into kind of a subtle blue shade that is slowly breathing, getting brighter and dimmer over time. Another one here is a gradient that will slowly change into different colors after a few seconds. One here that starts off in the middle, rippling outwards, before looping all the way back into the first mode that we saw there from the beginning. And even the speed can be adjusted by tapping on function plus. This is the fastest that the rainbow here can be rippling outwards, versus minus key, you can freeze it onto almost a single frame, making the transition here be as slow as possible. So not bad as far as variety of customization options are concerned. And going into some additional screen settings next, we can tap on function and click down on the knob to enter into our screen setting controls. So from here we can go into the aforementioned kind of wallpaper mode or go into the main screen we saw there from earlier. Next one here allows us to choose the individual effects. Tapping on it once to go inside. This actually allows us to control some of the properties including the lighting that we saw there from earlier, a single colorway or RGB for the backlight, and you can choose between white as well. And let's also go back there by one page. Also the brightness level of the, again, overall keyboard. If you want it to be brighter versus dimmer, you can adjust it now using the dial. Again, the speed of the animation that we also controlled there earlier using function commands can also be triggered now using the smart display, moving faster or slower. The next tab over also allows us to change volume, again higher or lower, before looping onto the very end. So basically a lot of those lighting patterns for the keyboard you can also set up using the smart display, making it a little easier to control. You can also turn the display off, by the way, by tapping on function and in, and now it will turn dark to consume a little bit less power, but we can tap on it again to wake it up. And there is an optional companion app that you can download on your Windows computer, allowing you to assign different macro shortcuts, as well as change the lighting under each key. The different lighting transition effects can also be adjusted more quickly using the app. Plus, you can push your own wallpaper into the small ticker display. So it doesn't have to be just the AJAZZ logo, but rather can be your name or your favorite GIF based on your choice, and then save it onto the keyboard's built-in memory. And otherwise, between the 3 different typing profiles, I would say even the Bluetooth is not bad, thanks to a relatively up-to-date Bluetooth 5.0 support. So as you are kind of typing things rapidly, it doesn't seem to really drop any letters or keys. Didn't encounter too much latency when it came to just general typing. Of course, if you're using it in the wired mode, that will be the fastest technically if you're connected to your computer and doing more intensive gaming. It is a universal keyboard, so Linux, Windows, Mac OS should all be supported. It's just that the companion software part, if you're trying to change what the ticker screen is showing, will require Windows, but as far as typing is concerned and the built-in controls, any system will do, including Android as well as iOS. Last but not least, in the Bluetooth mode, you can pair up to 3 different Bluetooth devices simultaneously and switch back and forth between them, just tapping on function E and then using these shortcuts. So if you have a phone and your laptop, for instance, both paired to the keyboard, you can more quickly hop back and forth between those different devices that you can all control using this one keyboard. So that is more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the AJAZZ AK820 Max Elite. Although it doesn't necessarily break new grounds when it comes to features, it is a pretty well-performing mechanical keyboard that has plenty of character that doesn't break the bank at only around, again, $50 or so. It's very colorful, might be a little loud for some folks, but of course you can choose other color versions based on your preferences. The most important part would be the keycaps are indeed super well stabilized and satisfying to type on. I do also like some of the small touches, such as the dual elevation that you get from the kickstand as well, showing some nice attention to detail. It's a pretty fun 75% mechanical keyboard overall. You can learn more details if interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the AJAZZ AK820 Max Elite.